All right, greetings everyone. Welcome to the first part of the video for section 5.2. We're going to continue on with our study of circles, but we're going to look more at angles and circles now. So in preparation for this section, there's some important pieces of vocabulary that we need to know. And these three terms that you see here, they have very precise specific definitions in our textbooks, so you can check those out there. I'm going to go over more some visual representations of these things. So the first thing is this idea of a measure of an angle. And I think a lot of us could identify or give examples of measures of angles, so maybe 90 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, things like that. But sometimes I find it's hard for folks to describe what exactly are we talking about, or what does it mean when we're talking about the measure of an angle. What is that? And so let's look at this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an angle here. So say this is my angle, and it's got two sides that kind of go on forever and ever in each direction. And I want to know what is the measure of that angle. Well, an angle measure is a measure of rotation. And so what we can kind of do here is select what we could call a starting side. So this one I'm highlighting in red. I'll call that my starting side. And in fact, we use the term initial side to describe that. And then I want to see, in order to get to the other side, how much do I have to rotate around? And I think about it as if we're moving around a circle. So I think of starting from that side highlighted in red and then rotating in a circular motion to get to the other side, okay? And that amount that we rotate, that is the measure. Okay, so the part that we rotate, or the amount we rotate from initial side to a second side, which I should also give you a name for that. We call that second side the terminal side. Okay, so it's the amount we have to rotate from the initial side to the terminal side. And you can measure this either way. So I could actually flip my two labels here and make that top blue side the initial side and the bottom red side the terminal side, and measure the rotation there, and it should still give me the same answer. Okay, so that's the measure of an angle. And then something that goes along with that are units for measuring the angles. And one of the most common units we use are degrees, which again, I imagine that maybe you've encountered before. And degrees really come from circles. So if you think about a full circle like this, most of us probably remember that in a full circle, there are 360 degrees. So a degree is really like 1/360th of a circle. So if we were to just go 1/360th of a circle rotation around, that's how much a degree is. And then finally, something that may be a little less familiar to us is this idea of measuring angles in standard position. And so here's how that works. And this is the way we're going to measure angles throughout chapter 5. Is we want to imagine a set of coordinate axes, so a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. Often these will be x and y axes, but not always. And for measuring something or an angle in terms of standard position, here is how we do it. So we're going to take the initial side of the angle, and we're going to place that on the positive side of the horizontal axis, so kind of like this, so that it would be the initial side. And then we're going to rotate counterclockwise from that initial side to get to our terminal side. Okay, so now here in blue we have our terminal side. Okay, so that's what we mean when we're talking about measuring an angle in standard position. We put, again, the initial side along the positive side positive part of the horizontal axis, and then we rotate counterclockwise until we hit our terminal side. Okay? All right. So let's keeping in mind this idea of measuring angles in standard position, let's look at finding some measures of some angles. So here I've got a couple of circles, and we've got some angles labeled in them. So for the first one we see here, recall we're measuring these in standard position. So this red side I just highlighted there, that would be the initial side. This vertical side I'm highlighting in blue, that would be our terminal side. And then for the measure, we're trying to figure out how much did we rotate to go from that red side to that blue side. Well, I can see, or recall, that the full circle here, right, if we go all the way around the circle, that's 360 degrees. And it looks like we went just a quarter of the distance around that circle. So we might do a fourth times 360, or 360 divided by 4. Either way we do it, I think we'll get that the measure of this angle here is 90 degrees. Okay. For the second angle we have here, again, the initial side is right there on that positive part of the horizontal axis. The terminal side in this case might be hard to tell, but we're talking about this side here that I just highlighted in blue. And then we want to figure out again, how much do we rotate around from the red side to the blue side. Well, we just found that one kind of those quarters of the circle is 90 degrees. So we know, for example, that this whole measure along here, that's 90 degrees. And it looks like this 90 degree angle has been divided into 3 separate pieces that are all the same. So if we take 90 degrees and divide it by 3, I think we'll see the measure of this angle here is 30 degrees. All right. Good stuff. All right. Now, what if we are given an angle measure that's something like this? It's like negative 45 degrees. So we just looked at how angles can be measured that are positive. So we saw an angle measure of positive 30 degrees and positive 90 degrees. But what about negative? What do you suppose that means? I'm going to draw a coordinate axis here. And since we're still measuring stuff in standard position, probably I'm still going to have my initial side right here along the positive part of the horizontal axis. But if I'm going negative 45 degrees, where's that terminal side going to be? Right, to get to the terminal side here, we're actually going to rotate clockwise this time. So in the last 2 examples we saw, we rotated counterclockwise, and that gave us positive angle measures. So here, when we have negative angle measures, that means to rotate clockwise. Now, again, keeping in mind that each one of these little quarters of our full circle here is 90 degrees, and 45 is half of 90. I think our terminal side then is going to be halfway through one of these quarters, so probably right about here. And again, it's going to be down that lower right-hand quadrant, rotating clockwise since the angle measure is negative. So this angle I've just drawn here, that's going to have a measure of negative 45 degrees. All right, last thing for this video. So for those of you that had me for Math 141, Pre-Calc 1, you know that I'm a huge stickler on using variables other than X and Y, because out in the real world, we actually very rarely encounter variables that are just X and Y. So we use lots of different types of variables, or different examples of variables in Math 141. Well, in this class, we're going to continue that practice of using variables that are not X and Y. And in fact, when we're talking about angle measures, we often use Greek letters to represent either angles or the measures of unknown angles. And the ones that you see here are some of the most common that we'll use. And not the only ones, but they're some of the most common. So you see there's the theta. It's kind of like an O with a line through it. A phi, which when I draw this one, I usually do the second example there. It's kind of a lowercase o with a vertical line through it or a slanted line through it. Alpha, which looks like a cursive A. Beta, which kind of looks like a cursive B to me. And then gamma, which is the one that always seems strange because this really kind of looks like a Y, right? And when I draw this one, I usually do kind of a Y with like an extra tail. So that thing there that I just drew is kind of my example of a gamma. Okay, so make sure you're familiar with and can recognize these letters. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you for watching.